Let's go to the bad. And there's a lot of bad tonight, folks. I apologize. Usually we try to incorporate more inspiration into the post game. We'll get back to it next week, particularly when we have Milton Alamati in studio, which is like an innately inspiring experience. All right, here is the bad.
But it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good. No good, really bad for you. But it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
Bolsonaro.
I think we got to talk just a minute at some point about that whole thing. Yascha Mounk is a sort of, he's the kind of, you know, I would say basically the millennial middle-browed Davos intellectual. He, just as like, you know, Thomas Friedman was, well, he was a bit older, but he was, you know, he cut his teeth with globalization. And Fareed Zakaria, actually, among other things. I mean, Fareed Zakaria wrote one book essentially saying that democracy was overemphasized in the post-Cold War world and we needed judicial regimes. He kind of juxtaposed liberty and democracy, which befits his politics. And then he was right smack in the like 2007 kind of like positive obsession with China and India. And Yascha Mounk is the extremism, man. Everything's extreme. Where's the vital center? It's extreme, man. And, you know, one of the most funny things about Yascha Mounk's book, and I will totally confess, I don't remember the name of it, and I did not read it, but I read a very smart review in the LA Review of Books where they said, you know, interestingly enough, for a guy who draws, you know, kind of definitionally draws false equivalencies and worked at the Tony Blair Institute, which, you know, to kind of simplify a lot of things, if you wanted to say, why is there a rise in right-wing extremism? I think an acceptable answer is a photo of Tony Blair. So you have, but in the book, the guy says what in the review in the LA Review of Books, he said what's kind of funny is that Yascha Mounk's actual policy solutions, as befit a European academic, are basically soft center-left social democratic interventions. So he kind of gives away his own hand there. Anyways, he's incoherent. And he's really outdone himself.
He's an intellectual. He's a liberal intellectual for people who think Rutger Bregman and Anand Giridharadas are communists.
That's probably a really, yes, for people who can't handle somebody going on CNBC and telling like the worst people on earth that maybe they should pay a little bit of taxes and also still have plenty of like harebrained schemes that they're both open to. You know, but people can't handle a non-Giridharadas. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Although non-Giridharadas getting a little bit Alex Jonesy with his Elizabeth Warren secret documents dump.
Oh, I haven't heard about this.
I think it was funny. It was sort of like, Wall Street is scared. They're scared. I'm having the conversations. Like, okay, not sure. But
got
that's
the documents.
I got the documents. Wall Street's totally terrified of a two-party tax, of a politically ineffective general election candidate with limited appeal charisma. They're terrified. She's going to clean up Cambridge and Somerville. Let me tell you something, folks. They're absolutely terrified of her.
I got it on J.P. Morgan Chase stationery that they're actually not afraid of Bernie at all. They're only afraid of Elizabeth Warren. They think Bernie is actually Bernie's on their payroll.
So. Yeah, Bernie's on their payroll. They're totally, because Bernie doesn't have this secret, secret ninja Jedi cookbook of bureaucratic maneuvers that only Elizabeth Warren has. So she'll be able to do all sorts of secret regulation, folks. That's the way you're going to help her at Wall Street. All right, yeah. I'm sorry to let my annoyance at Anand Giridharadas derail this segment, but that was still funny. So look, Yascha Mounk, a lot of it. This goes back, though, to the research from David Adler, a previous guest on this show, that the one demo that is the most skeptical of democracy and actually in line with the Fareed Zakaria reference is the center. And what does Yascha Mounk do when faced with an objective? I mean, look, I'm actually noticed somebody even on our Patreon page go like, it's all conjecture, whether or not it was a coup. Now, I'm stipulating everything. I think Evo Morales, because of his incredible success in cutting poverty and empowering indigenous communities and winning several elections, is an incredibly admirable leader who one can have absolutely legitimate critiques on, but those critiques are from the left and have nothing to do with anything that has just happened in Bolivia. But I think anybody who has a functioning dictionary around them would recognize that when the military says leave, that's a coup. Now, I understand some people have even literally fixated on the please leave part as somehow mitigating.
Oh, they use matters?
So
the problem
apparently
with Chile,
the military is just like, no, senor, we were being polite.
Yeah, the problem with Chile is Allende wasn't asked nicely.
No, that was the thing, was that Pinochet was super fucking rude about it. So I can't even get into the stratosphere of delusion that would deny that this event is a coup. That we're just not operating in reality having that conversation. So Yascha Mounk, the guy who's so concerned about extremism, I will say, a government that has paramilitaries running around the streets mowing down protesters, and the interim self-declared president is carrying around a massive Bible.
The most ridiculous Bible.
The most ridiculous Bible. Yascha Mounk was early out of the gate with "It's not a coup," and of course, this is Yascha from November 11th. No, Evo Morales' resignation is not a coup. It's one of the few big victories of democracy has won in recent years. Both leftist dictators like Venezuela's Maduro and far-right populists like Hungary's Orban should be terrified by it. To which I could say, unless Hungary's military is all of a sudden extremely concerned about the rise of anti-Semitism in that country, I would say Orban has nothing to worry about. And the Venezuela example is actually also very stupid, because one of the, taking aside any moral critique of Venezuela one way or another, and there's absolutely valid critiques of Maduro, even as we oppose a coup every step of the way. To the extent that the Venezuelan government has integrated tightly with the military, what lesson would any leftist in Latin America have? They're still standing because of that relationship. And Evo won multiple elections, slashed poverty, had an economic performance that even the Financial Times praised a couple of weeks ago, deposed in a coup. If I was a leftist in Latin America, I would be thinking extremely seriously about how to empower the military in a way that worked on my terms. That is the only rational geopolitical consideration that could come out of this. And by the way, obviously empowering the military in any way is terrible for democracy. So Yascha Mounk on November 11th, speaking out against extremism by endorsing a coup in a country I'm not sure he's ever visited.
We should follow this thread a little bit.
Okay, and then he goes on.
Yeah,
I am very, now this is also immediately the ass covering begins.
Yeah.
I am very worried about the cycle of polarization and political revenge. And obviously some people in the opposition themselves are nasty figures.
Nasty.
Do you notice when you start using, like, Egypt is such a great example. And Evo Morales is not in any way a Muslim Brotherhood leader, okay? He's not a Morsi. He's a left-wing social democrat who did a hell of a lot of good, as well as some bad. But we got to be clear about who he was. But the point being is that I'm not a supporter of Morsi. He was deposed in a coup. What General Sisi has done in Egypt, from mass death sentences, a even more repressive state apparatus, and then under Mubarak, could you imagine? You know if somebody ran for president, they would actually be rightly castigated if they called ISIS nasty guys or something. Like it's a trivialization. These are paramilitaries that are burning indigenous flags, that are absolutely connected with the right in Argentina and Brazil, that represent people in the agricultural region that consider themselves European and indigenous less than them, that want to return to feudal neo-fascism.
It's just some bad apples, Michael.
Just some bad apples, folks. They're not, quote, nasty guys. Okay, nasty means like, hey, Evo, you're a shithead. It doesn't mean like we're organizing paramilitaries. And granted, this is after Yasha's just chicken shit nonsense he's putting out. But the government announced a couple days ago various sort of, like, well, sure, military can kill people, they're protesters, they're a member of Evo's party. This is more Yascha Mounk ass covering.
Now, before you read this,
yes.
I want people to notice how he uses modifiers in this sentence to try to make, like, people always tell themselves when they use like 4 different modifiers in a single sentence because they can tell that actually the words themselves aren't going to make the case for them.
Exactly. I'm deeply aware that it could go wrong. Revolutions
could go badly wrong.
Could go badly wrong. Excuse me. You're right. Revolutions, even righteous ones, often do. Again, literally not a revolution. Like literally not. Like in the same way that something that is, far more, Mugabe's removal there was a mass protest in the military and the government stepped in and they said, Monanagua is going to replace you. And there was barely a ripple. I mean, there was a lot of public support for that move. You would not call that a revolution. Egypt wasn't a revolution, just definitionally. And Yascha Mounk is supposed to be the academic.
Wait, Bible being back in the palace isn't the definition of a revolution?
Yeah, maybe in a certain sense you're right. But for all that justified caution, Bolivians ousting Morales after he blatantly falsified an election should serve as an inspiration to Venezuelans, Hungarians, Russians, and more.
Hungarians are like...
Yeah. All of the left and liberal Hungarians who oppose neo-fascism were really worried about the deposition of a democratically elected indigenous leader in another hemisphere. That was totally that's the signal they were waiting for.
And it's so obnoxious for somebody to consider themselves to be an academic. Like, I understand people who are just sort of casually consuming media and news about the rest of the world, maybe misunderstanding what happened in Bolivia, but to not recognize the fact that the claims of falsifying any votes in Bolivia never happened, has not been proven, it's only been alleged, and the only thing that's been alleged is that literally the quick count was interrupted for a brief period of time. It's so irresponsible to the point of literally, being, in a certain way, responsible for the chaos when you're over here talking about how, there's a coup and we're fighting for democracy. It's complete nonsense.
Oh, definitely. This helps solidify the global consensus that the madness and the deaths that are taking place because of this are okay. And they were a natural outgrowth of people doing this. And again, another thing that never gets talked about is Morales literally within 24 hours, like, all right, you say it's not good, we'll have another election, which is already weird, frankly. And not to mention which, even in the most extravagant conspiracy theory scenario of which there's no concrete evidence, he still led the vote. There actually has literally been no one who's come forward and has said that he lost majority vote.
It's pure chauvinism.
Can we talk about Yasha's resume a little bit?
Yes, please. Sure.
So he was previously the executive director of the Renewing the Center team, center spelled C-E-N-T-R-E. Renewing the Center team at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change.
Yes. Tony Blair, to credit where credit is due, Tony Blair was involved in a lot of global change.
And so now he's writing at The Atlantic. His book was published by Harvard University Press, and he is 37 years old. There is not a chance in hell that he would have the position that he has in our current discourse if he didn't have these opinions.
Impossible. And by the way, he could be he could be a perfectly intelligent, capable guy.
I'm sure he is.
If he wrote, I just want to underline the point. Of course, but if he even wrote a sort of middle of the road, hey guys, part of the reason the center is collapsing is because of corporate corruption. And I actually do believe in some form of moderate politics. He still would not. I mean, he points to that, but this is what he's known for. This type of take.
And Tariq Ali had a really phenomenal book that people should read called The Extreme Center, and that's exactly what this kind of politics is, right? It's not moderation. People always say, I'm moderate, right? Literally, if you're standing on this, if you're saying the way that the world is, the way that it functions, an imperial power, Western hegemony that exploits the rest of the world, and any movement against it is now extreme, right? You actually are an extreme person yourself, and you're an extreme person in defense of one of the most violent political economic systems in human history.
You're the extremist. You're the extremist. Yascha Mounk. Bad. Not good. Very bad for you.
It's frankly surprised it took this long for him to be featured in this.
Yeah, it's a shock. And we haven't even spent nearly enough time on Ian Bremmer. We gotta deal with.
I mean, the problem with Bremmer is he's just like a decade and a half older Yascha Mounk.
That's right. Except he actually has a private consultancy, but I'm sure Yasha will probably get into that game too. You just watched a Michael Brooks show video. Subscribe to get them all. Why wouldn't you? Don't be foolish. Click subscribe below and become a patron as well. Patreon.com/TMBS. Thanks, everybody.